Welcome to the speaker series on a shot glass of recovery.
Yeah. Yeah. You get a house, you get a car, then you start thinking that's all you are, but you don't know the truth. So let me spell it out for you. Now I got your attention, now there's a start. Now sit and listen to my favorite part. Life's been giving us some clues. The answer lies inside of you.
Welcome to a shot glass of recovery, the speaker series. I'm your host, Lisa M. This is where we share powerful, real stories from the speakers of AA Solution Seekers Toronto, my home group. People who are living the solution and walking the path of recovery one day at a time. If something you hear here resonates with you, we invite you to show your support by dropping $1 or $2 into our PayPal virtual basket. It helps us keep carrying the message and making these recordings available to others who may need them. Now let's get into today's speaker.
The alcoholic named Stephen. My in-person home group is the Parkside group in Philadelphia. And then my online group is the Morning Unity group out of Ohio. And both of them groups have a long history of Alcoholics Anonymous in this fellowship. My sobriety date, September 19th, 1985, one detox, one rehab, pretty much one home group since I got here, and one higher power. I got power first as a child from my mother and my dad. I'm one of 19 children, first off. My mother had 19 babies in 25 years. She met my father at Mount Pisgah AME Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My father's from Ohio. His father brought the family to Philadelphia to become the pastor of the church. He met my mother in Sunday school when she was 9 years old. It's a family type church. And my dad asked her to marry him when she was 16 years old. They had 19 children, fifth. There's four children under me. And early on, even as a child, I had issues with behavior first, long before I picked up the drink. At 3 or 4 years old, I'd be sat on the steps in the home because I might have hit another kid who I didn't like playing with my toys or took my toy. I'd hit him in the head with one of the trucks, and I'd have to sit down for that. When I first went to school, I went into the kindergarten class, and I was only there a couple of days before they sent me back home because of my anxiety and the way I acted out because mom wasn't there. They brought me back to the school in first grade, and because of anxiety and not paying attention and behavioral problems, I was repeated the first grade. Right there, that gave me a self-esteem issue. I went all the way through elementary school acting up. I had my first girlfriend in probably second or third grade. I started drinking in the sixth grade and just light wines and stuff with other kids that had issues as mine were. I met my wife in the sixth grade, believe it or not. She was a nice looking girl, came from the city. She walked by me and I did something else that you're not supposed to do. I popped her on her behind. She turned around and slapped me in my face. I've seen the stars. And like on them cartoons, little hearts started going up because I was in. we start we started dating in seventh grade. I started selling drugs. I learned quickly from guys on the corner, and I bought her an engagement ring. Her mother told her right then, "Don't go out with any of them Patterson men. There's 19 of them, and if he kisses you, you might get pregnant." She was pretty much right because in the ninth grade, my son was born, Stephen Michael, my junior. I kept drinking, and I also did dishes just to fit in. I'm the real alcoholic. I loved alcohol, and it didn't love me though from early on. I threw up. I passed out a few times. I started having them physical accidents being drunk, like hitting your head. I would punch party walls thinking they were drywall, and my knuckles were swelled up from on one hand from hitting the walls because I would have temper tantrums in order to get my way. And if I didn't have a temper tantrum, I could cry on the spot, anything to try to get my way or make you think that most people just thought I had deep emotional problems. So I had my first child in the ninth grade, a second child. That daughter is now 49 years old. And I kept on, I got married, and that didn't last long, but our relationship did. We had three beautiful children. Her family was from the main line. Her grandmother used to be a nanny for the DuPont family in Delaware. Her dad had a catering business, and they used to own the property where Lankenau Hospital was built. So they had that Borough Wind money. And my family, my father's father, his, which we called Papa, he was the second generation in our family, had brought a lot of properties when he came from Ohio. He bought 5 or 6 properties right there on Spring Garden Street, up the street from the church. And we had a printing business. And my mother and his were almost 4 to 5 generations. The women were usually housewives, and they were mothers of the church, as my mother was. But at age 9, my father had passed away at 48 years old. And my mother, who had about 12 or more kids at home, literally went back to school, became a registered nurse, and kept all the children at home with the help of what we called godparents. We did everything in order in our home from morning till bedtime. You got up, you got dressed, you went to school. You came home from school, you did your homework, then you could play or watch TV. You washed your hands at 6 o'clock. We'd have dinner, you took a bath, and you went to bed. And if you kind of got out of line there, you might miss dinner, you might get a spanking. And so I wasn't raised in a home where dad was drinking, coming home and beating up mom, or mom was drinking and going to the corner. My mom's been praying for her children since we were born. But after I picked up that drink, and I went through high school as a drug dealer and a troublemaker, and we had little in the suburbs. They're like gangs like Spanky, but we didn't really till about the 10th grade start carrying these pocket knives and stuff. The first incident I had as a drunk or drinking was at a party, and one of my buddies decided to, because there were a group of guys were trying to beat us up, and he had poked one of them with his knife, and the police came and took us all down there. I wasn't charged with anything because I wasn't in the car where they found the weapon. But that's just trouble coming into my life. I got out of high school and I had a job. And I had jobs because my brothers were managing stores and stuff. So I would work at them stores, and I used to steal even then. What's the matter with taking some socks if you're running a shoe store? What's wrong with taking a pair of boots? And it might have cost my brother his career at that time. But being selfish and self centered to the extreme, I didn't think like that. How about selling bags of weed out of Tom McCann's, the Crash Brothers, the Foot Locker? Never thought about the businesses or anybody else's livelihood but my own. I got married while in high school. We had 3 beautiful children together, but we both had alcohol, and she had more of a drug problem. And I was cheating. on her after I married her, and come to find out she cheated on me. I got caught and she told me when she cheated. She usually cheated out of anger, wanting to get even and telling me to make a decision. I couldn't make smart decisions then. And when she left, after about a month, she sent the kids to me. Stephen was being raised by my sister and her husband in a very nice home. My sister's husband was a pastor at the time. My sister later became a pastor. And so there's always that side of my life that had great balance and a spiritual path in their lives, prayed. And then there was the other side where I hung on the corner with guys that were 4, 5, 6, and some even 10 years older than me, riding around in hot rods, 340s, road runners, Corvettes, going to drag races and stuff. At 13 and 14, I did that. And I was just, I thought I was growing up, but I was really very immature and had my own apartment, had my own little business, I thought. And my first wife was very intelligent, and her aunt owned an insurance company and she worked there. And before I ever got a job, I just sold weed. And I used to hit 52nd Street in Philadelphia. I was born in the suburbs, but I came to the city, and the city was not nice to me at all. It swallowed me up. I had big dreams when I was sitting on them bar stools, and I would see other guys that were from that type of lifestyle, and I wanted to be cool like they were, but that didn't really happen. A lot of times people would read me and could tell that I was either in fear or I was out of place. And so I just kept on drinking, and the wife had left and I had the kids, and I met my second wife, and I met her when I was 21, and she was younger than me. And her mother told me either take my daughter home or leave her alone. And we chose to fill up 2 garbage bags with her stuff and carry it up the street. And I was 20 years old at the time, and we've been together now. I'm 68. And when I met her, I told her I was going to keep her till something better came along. So we've been together now for 47 years. And we finally got married, and we had 2 children, but I still couldn't give up the girlfriends. And during that first marriage, I had a son named Sean Marquine outside of my marriage. And so that was 4 children. And then when I met my wife, whom I'm with today, upstairs sleep, we had 3 children. But then I raised other kids. We always brought other children into the home, but the drink was always there. I worked at South Philly at a Crash Brothers, a famous store in Philadelphia on South Street. Then after that, I got a job at Foot Locker. Then our brothers started a business, 4 of us, apartment maintenance and construction. And we started buying properties and flipping them and also renting them out. And we took care of over 100 properties in the Philadelphia area. And that's how we made money. But this is when my addiction was getting worse and worse. And I would drink that Windsor Canadian straight, a half a glass at a time, and I would chase it with Rolling Rock beers if I'm in the bar. But I winded up in the park. See, I kept drinking, and I always thought I had this pride that I was better than the other drunks in the park because of my family. My family were teachers and business owners and preachers. And so I would sit in the park with bums and look down my nose while we both did the same thing. I had to, at the end, I started getting into trouble. People were stealing my product because I was drunk all the time. The family business I worked for, my brother fired me because I would be on the job sites drunk, and our clients would come through, and you might find me in a closet with a can of beer, passed out. and he was a Marine. Brother Horace, I love him. He was an angel. He used to watch me in the park at night at the end. I took up residence in the park, and my brother moved me out, and we had our own properties, but he sent me up the street and paid the security deposit and paid the first month's rent, 2 months security, and he drove away. And he didn't argue with me or nothing. But I was very ill, so I started my own business, drunk, and I started getting jobs because my family name had a reputation, and I was able to get jobs. Instead of working, though, I decided to get a clipboard and become, you know, big shotism. And I'd get deposits, and by the end of the job, sometimes I didn't have money to complete them. Then I started paying people who work with me half the money because if I didn't finish a job, I didn't get the final payment, so they didn't get paid. But I'm still drinking. I started getting ill, and this is when the disease set in, where I know not only drank, I drank because I had to. I shook until I got the first drink. And towards the end, when I had the first drink, I would throw it up. Or sometimes I just threw up from the poison sitting in my stomach after the end of a day of getting drunk 2 or 3 times. And that 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 throw up started turning having red blood in it. And I started having diarrhea. And some mornings I'd be so ill, I'd have my head over the sink. And I think God made sure to design that bathroom for me because I'd be on the toilet and I'd have my head in the sink and my throat would burn from the acid coming from my stomach. I had an ulcer that set in the middle of my chest and I started getting purple marks on my body because I was kind of like bleeding from the inside out and I had no muscle mass at the end. And I weighed 126 and one half pounds. And my name is Stephen Michael, but my name became Reds in the city and then Crazy Reds. I was known to sit in the middle of the park. People started stealing my product and people started taking me out of after hour spots with pistols. And I would go out a lot of the times before I really didn't want to do nothing but drink. I went out with married women a lot of the time. I was young when all this was going on, and women were picking me up and sending me home in the morning. I felt like the whore. I sit on the side of the curb with my shoes scratched and damaged from being pulled out of a bar or something and slid across the sidewalk and sat on a stoop at the front of my Stacy Adams, brand new sometimes, because I always able to make money, but and I had brand new shoes on and they would take the whole toe would be worn down from somebody sliding me across the sidewalk and sitting me on a stoop. And a lot of this stuff is coming to me because I've been doing a lot of service, making meetings, and I've been asked to share. This is, I think, the fourth time this week I shared my story, and I'm getting tired of hearing myself. So I'm looking, stuff has been coming up that happened to me very young, and I'm starting to remember. Like I was probably 9 years old, and that just came to me. I took a towel and wrapped it around my neck, and because I fantasized a lot, I stood on the window sill of our laundry room and I jumped because I wanted to fly like Superman. This is as a kid, and I hit the ground, and I it's the first time somebody said to me, it was my mother, and she took me up the steps. I was crying, and she was looking down at me, and she said, "There's something wrong with you, boy." And that happened so long ago, almost 58 years ago or so, and I still remember remember that, and there definitely was something wrong with me, and so my wife left. I had kids, and then I had a girlfriend who's now my wife, and I had another girlfriend who, on my wedding day, was 9 months pregnant while I was going down the aisle to marry my wife. I'm just saying all this to let you know just how messed up my thinking was and my moral compass was being a minister's son. Even the fact that I winded up in the middle of the park, Crazy Reds, with a hay hook and a poker at 126 pounds, wearing just shirt and pants in the summer, barefooted. And I let my beard grow long, and my nails, for some reason, I wanted them long. And I would look at the moon like I was a wolf sometimes. And you giggle about tragedy. Uh, I knew the insanity was there. So I'm going to get to the recovery. In August of 1985, I'm sitting in the park on my birthday, and I had on a pair of MC Hammer pants, a pair of cowboy boots, and a black shirt with two buttons missing. And that was dressing up for my birthday. My hair was probably 6 inches long, and it was matted down to about an inch and a half or 2 inches because I just would pat it. And it took probably 4 or 5 hours to comb that out when I got sober. And I would get 6 packs of Old English and sit in the middle of the park. And I even had my own bench. I'd come in the park and I'd be a bench in the middle that I sat on. And I considered that my piece of property because I wouldn't drink my beer until whoever was on that bench left it. My son, Sean, was 5 years old at the time, a year earlier. And this was a girlfriend. And of course, she's seen other men because I was married. I didn't care. But when Reds came over, sometimes men would have to walk by me, and they didn't really like that. And a jealous, I guess he thought he was her boyfriend, took my 6 year old son from school and beat my son to death and stuffed him in a sewer pipe in Fairmount Park. Here goes the humiliation. I cried for the loss of a son, but I walked 52nd Street before they found him. And I stopped at every bar and told people, "Have you seen my son?" As people had empathy for me and they would give me drinks. And when you talk about the eighth and ninth step, how do you make amends for that? Not being in that boy's life as a strong enough father where somebody wouldn't disrespect me as so. And that hurt. It did. I got sober right after that, about a year later. And I come to the rooms. This is what happened. I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous after a I went to a detox in Brandywine, Pennsylvania, and everything around me was crumbling. And my mother did an intervention with three sisters and a brother, and she had to buy me underclothes and pajamas and few outfits in order to go to the rehab and detox. And I was very ill, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And I was seeing things at the end that weren't there. Well, maybe they were because they were bad spirits. And I usually jumped out of my boots as somebody knocked on the apartment door. And I walked into the streets in Philly with my head down. I didn't know 5 a.m. from 5 p.m. because I got drunk 2 to 3 times a day. So I'm sitting in the park on that birthday, drinking my beer, minding my business. And the guy sat up on the park bench and looked at me and said, "You're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to die." And it shook my spirit. And for the first time, I opened up that Bible that my mother gave me for Christmas years before. And I laid it on my chest and I said, "I need help." And the intervention came, my sister and brother. And they told me I was going away. And first I said, if my brother would give me the properties and the money that I put into the business, I'd be okay. And my mother said, "No, you're going away." And when my mother spoke, you followed her direction. And so I went away. And I woke up and the doctor came in the room and diagnosed me with acute alcoholism. And I went into left that detox and went into the rehab. And I went there fighting the system, of course, because that's what I did all my life. and telling the doctors who were helping me how to help me. I shook like I was holding on jackhammer in a street. And I was there 15 days, and my sister sent me a T-shirt. That T-shirt had a unicorn, a rainbow, and one scripture from Philippians, and it said Philippians 4:13 on it. I didn't know what it meant, but I took that Bible that my mother gave me, and I opened that Bible up around the 15th day or so, and every night I read that scripture from the 8th verse. It talked about whatsoever things were true, pure, noble. It spoke about the peace that surpassed all understanding. I don't think I had peace since I was 9 when my father passed. It told me I could have money or have no money, but I could find comfort in my higher power, whom I call Jesus Christ. That's my little box. The big book says that I would find a higher power and I would call him by name, and that I am not humbled or humiliated, I should say, by that fact that I depend on a higher power. And the big book also says that we do not shrink when it comes to the higher power in our life. So I don't, but I don't bring it into the rooms like I did when I first got sober. When I first got sober, I had one outfit where I had red shoes, white pants, a red belt, red suspenders, a Bible, and a big book. You talk about clearing a room. I come to the clubhouse, I sit in a room and I could clear a room. So I had to learn how to share my story in a general way as it's taught. And so I do that now. I don't mention my higher power when I'm in a topic discussion unless it's on God. Other than that, I share on the topic and I say my higher power. But I want you to know who I am. I'm here to share my story. So I share who I am. And I had a spiritual awakening 35 days in on my knees, reading that same scripture every night on my knees. And when I would stare at it, a light in the distance, it would turn into a cross. That's just my story. I had a spiritual experience. It hadn't become an awakening yet, quite yet. But I had that spiritual experience and I had a vision. I had a wool's lamb fleece laid on my shoulders and the session left me like that. I got up the next morning and I went to group and I told my therapist, uh, my one-on-one therapist, that I had came down off the mountain, and she just wrote on her clipboard, probably he's still crazy. But I never picked up a drink after that. And it's been 40 years, 5 months, and about 20 something days, one day at a time. I grew in this fellowship because I went from that rehab. I was told by my early sponsor, Jim Miles, who's passed. He said, when you leave here, I want you to go down to the 4021 Club or to the Parkside group. The history of the 4021 Club, it was started in 1945 and it was started in segregation. A guy named Burrell had brought the AA message to Philadelphia. There was a guy named Ray Schutz from the Parkside group who met Burrell back in 1940. And the Parkside group had two meetings that were started that failed. We have a now, our history shows that the Parkside group was put on the books in 1951. But because of segregation and because of the way things were at that time, when you Google AA history in Philadelphia, they don't mention the Parkside group. But our name, Parkside Group, follows us around the country and around the world. People come to Philadelphia to visit the Parkside Group because one of our founders, Lou R. Sr., was friends with Bill W. Lou R. Sr. and Ray Schutz and a guy named Jim. I don't have the history in front of me. They started the Parkside meeting, and we were known as an integrated group in the history book. We're mentioned in an article from 1940. So I've been at that group for 40 years now. And we used to travel to the Cosmopolitan group down in Washington, D.C. And the Cosmopolitan group started in 1945. And they're written in the big book as you read Jim's story. So I went into a group that was Bill liked Lou R. Sr. because he knew the traditions better than Bill did. Lou R. Sr.'s wife became friends with Bob's wife. I have pictures of them in my camera I could show y'all, but I needed a home group that first off, when I came into the fellowship, I was at the a beginners meeting, the young people's group, which was started back at the 4021 Club in the 1940s. And from there, I kept hearing about the Parkside group and how they had a higher rate of recovery than most of the groups in Philadelphia. I like history, and some of this history I learned after becoming a member. So I went there. And when I went there, I seen a guy sitting at the front table. I asked who he was, and a guy named his last name was Leslie Walter greeted me at the 40 at the Parkside group, and he asked me what was my name. He had these huge hands and a big head with a Kango hat on it, and he reached his hand out and he greeted me. I told him my name was Stephen, and he said, "Stephen, welcome to the Parkside group," which meant they were greeters then. And he said that I could let the story that brought me here keep me here, and I've been able to do that. I lost a son, but didn't lose him. He transcended in my faith. At 6 years old, I came into the rooms. I was 5 years sober, and I lost a son who was 19, shot in Philadelphia when I was 5 years sober. And I shared that story, and a lady was there drunk. She heard my story, and she got sober the next day. I never seen that lady again till she was 10 years sober, and I was 15 years sober. And she said that I came to that midnight meeting. I went from the morgue to a midnight meeting at Parkside, not knowing why, but I was there for service that night. And God used me and used my story to help a lady say, wow, he didn't drink when his son was murdered. Maybe I can put down the drink because my husband left, or my job I lost, or I'm just caught up. And I kept sharing. I kept staying in the meetings, and I got sober. And I got so sober that I started a business, and I started having my wife and I started having children. And I strayed away from the group, and I walked into a meeting with 18 years sobriety, and a lady said, "Steven's here. He must be here to pick up his coin." That's the stuff the long timers did. They really helped me. One time, I had to walk by all these bars in the city to get to work, and I told one of my long timers that I don't like walking. Every time I walk down 52nd Street, I see all these bars, and he asked me, "Steven, why don't you just walk up 51st?" And that was like amazing to me that he had that type of intelligence, and I didn't. I stayed sober. Me and my wife started having children. I had children from my first marriage, and I had children from my second marriage, and I stayed sober. I made meetings like I drank, so I made over 20 meetings a week. And then I went back to my family home church. We've been in that church for over 140 years, starting with the second generation. We have seven generations now. You know what? It might be eight now because my brother just had a. All right. Well, anyway, I love family history, and I love history of my family, and I love the history of this fellowship. And they put me in the service. I went into the ministry, and I raised these children. And my son works in the prison system. I have a daughter that has two daycares. I have a daughter that has a bakery. I have a daughter who works with children that have mental disabilities and behavioral problems at school. So what I'm saying is most of the people in my family are in service. And then I have the two sons and a daughter that I lost. But I raised three other children. And my son Stephen was shot and murdered. And Halima, I redid her whole house. She had a pain in her elbow, and she passed from cancer in 3 or 4 months. And these were hard times in recovery. And I haven't gotten through them yet. I'm living through them, through my faith and through this fellowship. This is what's a part of my life today. When I look at the steps of AA, I go to the principles. Step one is honesty, admitting my powerlessness over alcohol. Step two is hope, believing that a higher power can restore me to sanity. And boy, oh boy, did I need that. Step three is faith or surrender, trusting in a higher power to guide my life. Step four was courage, taking a fearless moral inventory of oneself. Step five is integrity, admitting wrongs to oneself, God, and others. Step six is willingness. That's in the book a lot. Willing or will. Being ready to let go of character defects. Step seven is humility, humbly asking for shortcomings to be removed. Step eight, brotherly love or loving and kindness, making a list of harmed persons and becoming willing to make amends. Step nine is discipline. I love discipline. That's a big one. Making direct amends when possible. Step 10, perseverance, continuing to take personal inventory and admitting my wrongs. And that means as soon as possible. Spiritual awareness is step 11, improving my conscious contact with a higher power through prayer and meditation. But it talks about that gives me the power to carry it out. Step 12 is service, carrying the message to others and practicing these principles in all areas of my life. And I start my day when I wake up in the morning, and the first thing that I say is, God, because I don't memorize stuff like Vic. Vic, he memorized probably 6 or 7 prayers. That's where I got the Knots prayer from. And that's the only part I can remember at 68 is God, I offer myself today. And that's good enough. I don't have to go through the do with me and all of that. God, I offer myself today. And I breathe in. I breathe in 3 times and thanking for the breath of life. Um, I was ill all of 1920, 2025. And I was also still in physical therapy and I have a mental therapist. And it's because I had a bad injury and a few discs in my back irritate my spine. It's called a pinched nerve, but there's different degrees and mine had me so I have a hard time standing for long periods of times or sitting for long periods of time. And my neck will hurt or my back will hurt. And I usher at my church on the first Sunday and last Sunday. And when I stand up, my legs start to hurt all the way down. But I stand up and I smile because I'm not there to play the violin. I'm there to serve God. God gives me the strength to do whatever I do. And I was laid flat on my back for months. And then I was mentally, physically, and spiritually. I was at a ground zero in January of last year. But I believe in the progression of recovery. And through mental therapy and physical therapy, I'm better. And I love that I have learned to do with what God gives me. I still can serve. I've had 2 operations over the last 8 years. And we joke that most of our dates are the doctors, and then we go to lunch and look into each other's eyes and remember how much we love each other. I have grandchildren, 10 of them. I have a great grand, and my grandchildren come over. Sometimes they want to stay. They cry when they have to leave, and I love it. I'm so ready for them to go because they fight the whole time. They're 4 and 7. And when they stay the night, they want to lay in the middle of me and my wife and they put their foot in my face and they it's just a mess. I sleep maybe 2 hours, but I love it. When they leave, I'm so happy they leave and an hour later I want my grandbabies back. I have a couple dogs who are my children. I have Malachi and I have Nona and I have a grandpup, Lux. And we lost one of our puppies, our dogs. She was 98 in human years. She passed from cancer at Christmas, and we cried. And then Lux came into our life. My daughter picked up a puppy who was in the basement of a crack house, hair mangled, bugs, and that dog is so spoiled. And I love that dog. Jumps up on the bed. Didn't used to run from me, but now it jumps up on the bed and will lay as close as she can to me. And I love this fellowship. I love service. and I don't have time to read all the things I wanted to read. But let me see if I can read just a little bit because I love Bob's story. And it might take me a little over that minute I have left. Don't like to go over time, but Bob wrote at the end, I do this for sense of duty, pleasure, because in doing so, I pay back a debt. Because every time I do it, it's a little more insurance for myself and the possibility of a slip. But he said, unlike most of our crowd, I did not get over my craving for liquor much during the first 2.5 years. He struggled with it. It was almost always with me, but at no time have I been anywhere near yielding. I used to get terribly upset when I saw friends drink and knew I could not, but I schooled myself to believe that though I once had the same privilege, I had abused it so frightfully that it was withdrawn. So it does not behoove me to squawk about it. For after all, nobody ever had to throw liquor down and pour liquor in. No, throw me down and pour liquor down my throat. This is the part I really like. If you think you are atheist, agnostic, a skeptic, or have any other form of intellectual pride which keeps you from accepting what is in this book, I feel sorry for you. If you still think you are strong enough to beat the game alone, that is your affair. But if you really and truly want to quit drinking liquor for good and all, I sincerely feel that you must have some help. We know that we are the answer for you. It never fails. And they used to say rarely have we seen a person fail, but Bob said it never fails. If you go about it with one half the zeal you have been in the habit of in the habit of showing when you were trying to get another drink. I love this book. This book has guided me through life along with my spiritual book. I'm a member of the Parkside group. I love the history and I love the big book. And I love the step book and I love the traditions. I could spend 2 hours talking about the books now, but I was asked to come and share my experience, my strength, and my hope, which is hearing other people's experience. So I'll just end with what it tells me. And it says, whenever, wherever somebody reaches out for help, that I want the hand of AA to always be there. And for that, I am responsible. I am Stephen Patterson, grateful, recovering alcoholic. And thanks for the pleasure of sharing my experience.
Just a quick reminder to subscribe, like, or follow if you like the show on any of your favorite listening platforms. If you like the speakers and other content on the podcast, please show us some love by leaving a review and consider making a PayPal contribution to help keep the show going at paypal.me/a shot glass of recovery. Every dollar makes a difference, and we thank you. Our speakers come from my AA home group, AA Solution Seekers. We meet every day at 7 a.m., so pop in sometime and say hello. Until next time, thanks for joining me on A Shot Glass of Recovery.
Everything you do, the answer lies inside you.